Hi everyone, I'm Suki from globalbridge and it's World Book Day, and today we're joined by Chloe from UCL to talk about super-curriculars. So without saying too much, I'm going to hand over to Chloe to go into this a bit more.
Thank you, Suki, and thank you everyone for having me. So as already said, I'm going to be speaking about how you can supercharge your learning with super-curricular engagement. And hopefully it's quite a relevant topic to World Book Day. We're going to talk a lot about engaging with learning beyond the curriculum and using what you've done in school to extend your learning and why that is important. So you can really start doing supercurricular engagement at any time. It doesn't matter what year group you're in, at what point you are in the university application stage, but it does become especially relevant if you are in year 12 and you are thinking of aspiring to university. So the aims for today's session are to understand what supercurricular engagement actually looks like, also to understand how we can include supercurricular engagement in personal statements, and hopefully by the end of the session, you'll take away knowledge and resources to create your own supercurricular engagement plan. So firstly, we might not have heard the term supercurricular engagement before, but we definitely have heard what extracurriculars are. So I'm going to start by just talking about what is different about them. So extracurriculars might be something that you've undertaken in school or outside of school. They're not necessarily directly related to your academic work or things that you're learning in the classroom. So for example, it could be being on a football team, doing some school theatre. It's always possible that sometimes our extracurricular engagement has a bit of supercurricular relevance, but supercurricular engagement is defined as activities that we're undertaking beyond the classroom, specifically so we can expand our knowledge and interest in a particular subject. But why is this important? And I'm going to give you a second to discuss why engaging in supercurricular learning might be important. So I've kind of come up with two reasons why it might be important. The first thing is quite practical. So when we're looking at aspiring to university, we're all going to have to write a personal statement. And examples of supercurricular engagement are essential in your UCAS application and most important in your personal statement. It will be the kind of bulk of the text that's going in that personal statement. And it's going to really communicate to universities and admissions tutors why you're the right person to study that subject. So that extracurricular engagement is also important, but it should be limited to about 20% of the personal statement and usually put towards the end of it. So the bulk of your personal statement is really going to be filled with what you've kind of learned outside of the classroom that has contributed to your enthusiasm and your knowledge of the subject you're applying for. The second reason that we might regard supercurricular engagement as important is your own personal development. So your supercurricular learning can help you understand more about the subjects that you enjoy, what your actual interests are, where your kind of specific interests really lie. But they can also help us to enhance our skills in things like independent learning, research, analysis, and critical thinking, which are all essential for university level learning. So there are really two things to this. You've got the practical personal statement angle. It's going to really help there. But it's also quite good for you to figure out who you are, what you're interested in, and what kind of skills can be developed to help you transition to university level learning. So I'm going to ask you now to take a moment to discuss in your classrooms what you think counts as supercurricular engagement. So what kind of activities might you do supercurricularly, that kind of thing. So I've got a few examples up here. The great thing about supercurricular engagement is you never really have to leave your bedroom to do a lot of the things on this slide. So for example, things like reading books, magazines or journal articles. If you're not so much of a reader, that's absolutely fine. There are so many other ways to take in information nowadays. So things like listening to podcasts or watching documentaries, completing free online courses, maybe going on YouTube to watch TED Talks or lectures. And then you've got some other ones here that are kind of more in-person or more practical. So you might visit a museum, a gallery, or an exhibition that's related to your subject interest. You might attend a summer school or a taster course, or you might even complete some relevant work or a volunteering experience as well that's in that subject area. One thing I will say is that where it's great to have some of these in-person things, if you don't have access to them, that's absolutely fine. Doing the listening to podcasts and reading books and magazines is really, really a good way to supercurricularly engage. What really matters when it comes to the personal statement is how you justify and explain how these activities contributed to your learning. And we're going to see some examples of this now. So I've got an excerpt here from a psychology personal statement. I'm going to read it through, and then I'm going to hand over to you for a moment to think through what sections are referring directly to the supercurricular engagement and which sections are referring to the explanation of how this has helped the applicant. So this person says, recently, through following BBC Radio 4's Mind Changers podcast, I am able to link case studies I have read in class to a real life setting. One episode that interests me looked at Julian Rotter's locus of control. I learnt that I was externally minded and began to expand on theories from social psychology. Through listening to the podcast, I was inspired to look for psychology in my own community. So take a moment to discuss which bits refer to the supercurricular engagement itself and which bits are about the explanation of how it developed the applicant's learning about psychology. And here are the answers. So in blue, we can see the direct references to the supercurricular engagement are these BBC Radio 4 Mind Changers podcasts. And it also talks about how listening to that podcast extended the students' learning, and they went on to look into Julian Rotter's locus of control and read a bit more about that. But what's really important here is you can see in green how much of the paragraph that the student is using to justify and explain how that supercurricular engagement really helped them. And that is going to be the key thing for your personal statements. So what's really important in our personal statement is that we learn to show and not tell. So you can have done lots of fantastic supercurricular engagement, but what's going to really matter is the explanation of the skills and the knowledge you gained and what you enjoyed the most. So when you are writing in personal statements about your supercurricular engagement, avoid the shopping list approach. Ask yourself, so what and why, and actually explain how those supercurricular engagement experiences led to you developing your subject knowledge and becoming more interested. And hopefully now we've kind of gone through all of this, we can start to think about how this applies to our own supercurricular engagement. So I have 2 tasks. You might not get them all done now, but you can start to think about how this all relates to your own learning. So have a moment to think about which supercurricular activities have you already completed, if any, and how it might have helped you. So it can be one line, one activity with one kind of explanation of how it's helped you develop your subject knowledge. And I've got an example here from Jamie. So Jamie says that he wants to study English at university, and he has started thinking about supercurricular engagement. He's based this a little bit on what he's done in the classroom. So he's done some extra reading based on Wuthering Heights that he studied in his A-level English literature class. So he went out and he read some other Bronte novels, which he borrowed from the school library, his favourite being Jane Eyre. He also likes to write film reviews and publish these on a blog. He loves reviewing film and TV adaptations of classic novels and comparing these. So we can see in this example, the additional reading that Jamie did that supercharged his learning beyond the classroom was the Bronte novels. So he'd started by reading one in class and then kind of got out and explored different types of novels and learnt more about them. And what he might have gained from this is learning more about the historical or literary context of the book itself by reading other Bronte novels, so expanding his learning. And if I'm an admissions tutor, I'm looking at this and thinking, this is someone who's very interested in English, and I can tell because they've gone out and read more things that interested them and learnt more from it. So that is one of the key parts of it. So you might be sitting here thinking that you've not necessarily done any of this supercurricular engagement just yet, and that's absolutely fine. You're in a great position now, especially with the summer coming up, to start thinking about what supercurricular activities you could intend to do before writing your personal statement. So start thinking about what things you could read, what are you currently finding interesting in class, and what could you explore more about. Think about what skills and knowledge that you would like to gain from the activity, and then give yourself a deadline to just map out your learning and plan for the future. So for example, with Jamie, he says that he really enjoys reading about how literary critics respond to texts and interpret them differently. And this is a fantastic one because that's something he might do at university. So he's going to ask the school librarian about texts like this available in the school library. As well as this, he says he wants to do some more creative writing practice as it's something he's really passionate about. And he wants to apply specifically for those English courses with a creative writing element. So he's going to go and search for free short courses available. And we can really see how Jamie is starting to develop his learning. He's taking things he's really interested in and starting to find his own subject niche and interests. So what I want you to do after this session is think of a few activities that you want to research more about. and then be quite intentional with the skills and knowledge that you hope to gain, and set yourself a deadline, maybe by the start of year 13. So the key takeaways from today's session are understanding what supercurricular engagement looks like, understanding it can be something that takes place in your bedroom. You don't have to go on a big trip or a big adventure. It could be really something quite manageable. We've also hopefully understood why and how to include supercurricular engagement in your personal statement. And we're in a position now with this knowledge to be able to create our own supercurricular engagement plans. Thank you so much for listening. Best of luck with your supercurricular engagement and your applications to university. If you want to hear more from us, you can find our website. We're Access and Widening Participation at UCL. Thank you.
That was brilliant. Thank you so much, Chloe. Hopefully, for those of you that are coming up to that period where you might be applying for university, that this is really useful for you, and you can start putting those supercurricular plans together and working out how you can weave that into your personal statement. Thanks, everyone, and see you next time.